which I brought from home and which I have not looked at. So I can draw them and shuffle, and then I can answer back from that stuff. And we'll see if that's good television. Because my guess is it's not going to be. But what are you going to do? It's me or Jay Leno at 10. Really. Although I'm on at 8. So I guess I'm... Wow, John's pointing at me. I realized the other day, I think I'm up against 2.5 Men. And I hear that show's going to get canceled because Charlie Sheen's going to go to jail. And that other guy's ex-girlfriend, the hitman she hires, is actually going to kill him successfully. And so all you'll have to watch is me. Maybe I can get a slot on CBS.
Ooh.
That'd be great. It'd be Keith, well, except they probably wouldn't want to call it Keith Explains, because I own that. And they wouldn't want to put a TV show on that someone else owns. They'd rather own it themselves, being a big studio and everything. So I'd have to name it something different, like Keith Lies, or Keith Talks for no purpose whatsoever for 28.5 minutes. That's kind of long. It'd be hard to fit on the screen. Keith Elucidates. I'd have to be smart if this show were... Anyway, welcome to Keith Explains. It's March of 2010. It's that month of every year, often, when my personal life goes freaking crazy because we spend like a week and a half going to Cinequest all the darn time, which consumes all the free time I don't normally have. And so I end up being really tired for all of March, which really carries through to whatever month is after March. And then through, pretty much through the summer. I don't catch up on sleep until mid-fall, really. Anyway, like I said, welcome. I got a bunch of things to talk about tonight. I guess I'll jump into the big one, which, like I said, is Cinequest. We've been going to Cinequest for the last week and a half. And I go to Cinequest because they give me a media badge. Because they're like, your media. And I'm like, really? And they're like, you have a TV show and you talk about Cinequest and that's what media is. And I'm like, you people need higher standards. This year I was pretty sure they'd cut me off because I emailed them and they didn't mail me back. But then when I went down there, they said, oh no, we approved you. We just forgot to email you. And I was like, oh, you poor people. You really need to hire someone to decide who appropriate media. But anyway, so we go to Cinequest and we watch the films and we talk about them here. And Loretta has Cinequest people on her show, and they get a lot of good information that way. And mostly I see a bunch of movies, and then I come here and I talk about why, you know, Cinequest is kind of cool and nonetheless screws with my head for a long time. We're halfway through the festival, really. And so I've seen a bunch of movies. I'll probably be going to see some more movies. I think so far I've seen 5 or 6-ish movies. I can't even remember them all, so you can see how freaking tired I am. We always go to the opening night movie. That was good. I forget what it was about, but someone died at the end, so I felt bad. And again, Cinequest always has a big catalog they come out with, and you can look through the catalog and decide what films you're going to see. But truthfully, most of the descriptions are really short. They're like a sentence or two. And so you can't tell from that sentence or two what kind of movie it is. And so I'm forced to rely on other information. Under the little sentence description, they always have a what languages it's in. And if it doesn't say English, I don't go. Because I don't like reading when I'm watching movies. I think I mentioned we went and saw Pan's Labyrinth. Got to be like 3 years ago. Not knowing that it was subtitled. And so I had to spend the whole movie doing this. Scanning back and forth while they talked in Spanish, as it turns out, being it was about the Spanish War, the Spanish Civil War. What with all the killing and I'm not even going to go into it. I talked about it before. So I try to avoid movies with subtitles. Now, not just because I don't enjoy reading, although that's a large part of it, but also because movies with subtitles, especially movies with subtitles that get into film festivals, tend to be dramas. And I don't like seeing dramas because It's like a girl versus guy thing. When I go to a movie, I like to see things blowing up or people doing stupid, funny things in a comedic fashion of some kind. And I kind of like documentaries if the documentary is about geeks or idiots. And if there ever was a documentary about idiot geeks, that would be great. And I actually have seen a documentary about idiot geeks, about those nerdcore rapper guys, and I thought it was pretty freaking funny. And I guess Spinal Tap is kind of a documentary about idiots. Well, they're not really geeks, they're just kind of loser. But, okay, so I also enjoy documentaries about loser idiots. But so I look at the catalog and I try to find comedies. Loretta, when she goes, likes the dramas, likes the you know, at the end you're going to feel something. And I'm like, no, at the end I want to ask the director some questions. And then I want to leave and go, that was pretty good. I'm not going to wake up at 4 a.m. thinking about that movie. Thank God. Because I need to be sleeping at 4 a.m. And I'm not going to be driving down the road and have an epiphany because of that movie I saw. Because I need to be driving, okay? Shouldn't have epiphanies in cars. Unless you're a passenger. If you're a passenger, you're allowed to have an epiphany in a car, although you should keep it to yourself. Because the driver is driving. That's my point, okay? Shouldn't be talking in cars either, although I do that. But I don't have epiphanies. No epiphanies while talking on a cell phone. Right out! That would explain some people I've seen driving, though. Like it. I realized my life is over. Hey, can you hang on, Margaret? I'm gonna pull. I'm gonna. Anyway, so for example, I'll give you it. So Friday night at Cinequest, I also enjoy going to see films that would make my mother blush when I describe them to her. So for example, several years ago, I went and saw the movie called Young People Fucking, which was just a great title. Like, I saw that title and I went, I'm going to see that movie. I don't know what it's about. I hope it's about what I think it's about. But even if it's not, I'll be a little disappointed. But still, it would have been. It was a funny movie. It was roughly about what you think, but not as much as you'd think. Which was both good and bad. Anyway, this year, in that category, the movie I went and saw was called Coming Farms. You're like, that sounds vaguely wrong. Well, it could just be a name, right? I mean, people are named Cummings, and somehow they make it to adulthood. So I guess it's got to be possible. So I went and saw that. And oh, by the way, this is, you can't tell, but this is Keith Cola. They made me put the black tape around it because apparently I'm not allowed to advertise Keith Cola on the show. But I'll point out Keith Cola is made with real sugar, as soft drinks are meant to be made. And bubbles and carbolic acid and caffeine. Happy caffeine. Oh, wait. So I went and saw this movie called Coming Farms, which was about an orgy gone wrong. I knew when I read that in the description I was going. I was like, yeah, okay, orgy gone wrong movie. What could possibly go wrong there? Turns out some things went wrong there. It's kind of a disturbing movie. It was funny for like 3/4 of the movie, and then something happened, and it was really not funny for a while. And then it started to get funny again, and then it ended. Oh. And then I thought, well, okay. And then the director came out, and he said, hi, everyone. And I turned to the guy next to me, and I said, that director's high. Because he was talking really ungodly fast about a lot of stuff. And I don't know if he was high, but I swear he was high. And he talked really fast about how he made a movie, and he had moved to Louisiana a couple years ago after the hurricane, and he set up a production company because Louisiana had put in place these great tax breaks for doing movie production there. And, you know, he had his friends, he made a bunch of movies he wasn't proud of. They were sequels to things. He's like, I made a sequel to a movie, I never saw the original. Like, okay, yeah, I mean, that's sure. And he named the movie, and I never heard of it. I never heard of the sequel. Like, a lot of stuff goes great to DVD, and so I wanted to make a movie that I could tell my parents I was proud about. So I made this movie called 24 Hours. And I can't tell my parents about it. But I would, if I could, I would be proud of it. And, he had some friend of his wrote it in a weekend, and then some other friend of his rewrote it from scratch in 2 weeks. And then they brought a bunch of people out, and they filmed it. And he's like, yeah, it was pretty good. It didn't change my life, but now I can say I've seen another movie about an orgy gone bad. Probably seen several movies about orgies gone bad. What else? I went and saw a movie called Friction last night with, I forget his name, Cullen somebody. He's my Facebook friend. We're buddies. Me and about 7,000 other people, I bet. Because after it, we were standing around and he was talking and I said, hey, I'm your Facebook friend. And he said, okay. And I was like, yeah, I just want to know how many you have. He's like, around 7,000. I'm like, you probably don't know me then. No. His was a documentary about filming a documentary gone bad, which was kind of weird because he's a documentary filmmaker. So there's this film, and it's ostentatiously a documentary about how he was going to go teach these 15, 16-year-olds at a film camp how to make films. So the documentary was supposed to be the film the kids would make at the film camp, but since things went so horribly wrong, that film was never finished. So he took all the other film that they also filmed while they were filming the film they were supposed to be filming and made a documentary about the filming of a film that didn't come about. And we got to the end of the movie, and you really have no exact idea what parts were real and what parts weren't real. And the director comes out and he says, okay, everyone, just in your mind, hold on to what you think about this movie and what happened. Because as we talk, you're going to change those thoughts. And maybe you'll be happier or maybe not. But remember, most people, when they get to the end of this movie, don't have the director here to ask him questions. So that's all they've got. And I'm like, well, then they're going to be really ungodly confused. Because this movie didn't make... I'm watching it and I'm thinking, well, clearly parts of this movie are fake. It's supposed to be a documentary about the making of a project that didn't happen. But for the documentary part, why would they have a filmmaker taping the filmmaker? You'd have this guy taping the kids, but you wouldn't have someone taping him taping the kids. Because they don't got that kind of money. They're 16-year-olds, for God's sakes. But that was funny. I enjoyed that movie. Monday I went and saw a movie that I guess the one I'll talk about the most because I saw it and I walked out of the theater and there was a little old lady next to me and she said, that was a movie. And I said, that was a very peculiar movie. And everyone that asks me, like, hey, what about that movie? And I'm like, that was very peculiar. I don't know if it was good or not. I kind of think maybe it was good. There were parts of it that were good. There were parts of it that weren't good. But all of it was peculiar. It was peculiar at the beginning. It was peculiar at the end. I could say 4 days later, having watched the movie kind of in the background at work today on my DVD player, because they gave me a screener copy of it, for God's sakes. Peculiar the second time. Which a lot of movies can't say that. A lot of movies, after you've seen them the first time, you watch them again, you're like, oh yeah, no, it's not peculiar. Movie, by the way, called Little Fish, Strange Pond. Good title, although every time I had to be very careful when I said it, because every time I describe it to someone, I call it Little Fish, Big Pond. Which I think would be a good name for a movie, but it's not the name of this movie. And Little Fish, Big Pond, I think was a book for kids or something. Truthfully. Now here's the part that's crazy. See, since I have a screener for the movie, normally when I talk about movies, it's a movie I've seen in the theater. I got nothing on the movie other than what I remember. But see, now, I just saw the movie again. And what's more, I can loan that screener to the idiot that does the little subtitle things that mock me. I'm watching the shows now. Okay? I have seen them on YouTube. You, editor guy, have got to cut it out. I know where you live. I know where your P.O. box is. And I could wait outside your P.O. box and I could beat you up. Anyway, so I'm going to loan him this screener. And what I want him to do is, as I'm talking about scenes in the movie, you got to put them up, okay? You put them up back here and you fast forward through the movie and stuff and show. It'll be great. It's like a multimedia extravaganza. Oh, and ignore the fact that it says like property of someone at the bottom, because I didn't get permission, but I don't think they're going to sue me. And if they do sue me, I'm going to blame the editor. Anyway, Little Fish, Strange Pond. So it opens. Okay, since I make a TV show, the other problem is I can't watch a movie or a TV show without thinking, how did they do that? You know, kind of for interesting scenes. Okay, so the movie opens and it's two idiots talking for a while in a like we're more clever than you sense. You know, sitting outside with the back and forth. I talk with a lot of people and I am not that witty or clever, and there are always these pauses when each of us is like, what the heck is he talking about? I don't understand. And then like two of you will start to talk at the same time. That never happens in these kinds of movies, okay? Everyone's always, the pacing's always perfect. So you know it was written beforehand. But anyway, there's this scene at the beginning and they kind of talk back and forth, and you get the sense that both of them are kind of peculiar people. One of the guys is in a suit and for no apparent reason talks with a British accent. And the other guy is kind of vaguely unshaven and looks a little slovenly. And he yells at the guy for talking for a British accent with no apparent reason. So you're like, oh, he's not supposed to have a British accent apparently. And you don't know how they know each other, and they're sitting outside, they're talking about the day, and there's a lot of obscenity. So you're kind of like, oh, okay, the movie's going to get an R, because I think you're allowed 3 fucks, and you've used them up, and we're 2 minutes in. And then they cut to this scene, and it's one of the two characters in white pajamas standing on a perfectly white set with a white bench in the middle. And I'm like, man, that's a nice white set. If I had a nice white set like that, I could do really great titling. You know, it's like a super green screen is what that is. We tried doing this show in green screen, and it sucked. Like, there were all these little green edges around me, and people wrote in and went, you are bad at green screening. And I went, we tried. And they're like, the cameras just do it. And I'm like, no, if one of the cameras can do it, but the other 2 can't, and the lighting's not the same between the 3 cameras, and there's always this green tinge around me. And so we gave up on green screening. I now technically do what I call black screening. And it's a term I made up because there's a black curtain behind me. So I make my editor guy go into my editing software and we say everything black should go away, and then like everything black goes away, which is huge amounts of the frame, and then we superimpose a picture on it, and then underneath that we put the same video track again, so all the parts that went away get put back in the last track. So it looks like I haven't done anything complicated, but it makes it take like 6 hours to render a show. On the fastest computer I can get. I'd probably like 2 hours now if I got one of them i7 machines, which I can't get because they're still not available. I'm kind of bitter about that. Anyway, so there's this nice white screen, and I'm like, man, that's a great white set. I wonder how they do it. And then I realize I'm wondering how they do it and not listening to the movie. So I got kind of lost for a while. I was like, what the heck is going on here? They probably explained it when I was wondering how they did that set thing. And then I watched it again, and no, they didn't explain it. So the fact that I had no idea what was going on for a while wasn't my fault. It was they were just trying to confuse everyone. And what else? Like I mentioned, so the movie, it follows these 2 kind of guys who apparently are in Los Angeles or somewhere in Southern California. And again, so you're watching a movie, and I can kind of tell how good a movie is by how often I look at my watch to see how much time has elapsed since the last time I looked at my watch. Because since I know I talk about movies, I like to have some vague sense of the pacing. Like, about 45 minutes in, this happened. And you only know that if you've looked at your watch to know that about 5 minutes ago it was 40 minutes in. So, like, there are movies that I know pretty much how long they are, and that's because they're not the greatest movies. And then there are movies that I have no idea how long they are because it didn't occur to me to look at my watch until the credits were running. Like, I remember watching Fight Club and thinking, wow, that was a good movie. That's got to have been like at least an hour and a half. And then going, oh, wow, that was 3 hours ago. Like, I don't think I looked at my watch once during Fight Club. I looked at my watch a couple times during this movie. Anyway, so we're following these two idiots kind of as they walk around Los Angeles. And you're not clear why they're walking around Los Angeles, doing weird things. They go to a porn store run by Zach Galifianakis. I can never pronounce his last name, but he's that comedian from The Hangover with the beard who does the weird comedy. He was in that comedy tour, and then he left. Like, midway through this movie they were filming about this comedy tour, he left. I'm like, that takes balls. Or you got to be an idiot. You can't tell. One's one or the other. And he runs a porn store, and they go in. I don't know why. It's never explained. To buy drugs, I guess. And then someone tries to shoot them. And then again, there's witty banter, okay? There's a guy in the porn store. He shot one guy. He's pointing the gun at you. Nonetheless, they're engaged in witty banter. I speak with some authority. If you're nearby me robbing a store with a gun and you pointed at me, I won't be witty. I will hand you my wallet. I will hand you my iPhone if you like, because I can wipe it remotely. I mean, it's not like you're getting anything. Plus, you'd have to know my secret 4-digit code. And 4-digit code protects my iPhone from your prying eyes. You'll never get through it. For God's sakes, think of how many 4-digit codes there are. And it's not 1, 2, 3, 4 either. A lot of people think it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not. Don't even bother to try that one. That's not my 4-digit code. You'd just be wasting your time if you tried that. Witty banter, witty banter. Cop comes in, kills a guy in the video store. And then the cop wants to ask them questions. And again, they're peculiar. Don't be peculiar around cops. It just attracts attention. I watch enough cops on TV, primarily on cop show. Ask anyone in my house. I'm disturbing with how much I like watching the cop shows. But again, I like watching them because it's like watching a train wreck in another person's life. Like, for God's sakes, if you get pulled over and they say, how many beers did you have? Don't say 2. Because everyone says 2. Say anything but 2. Say 2.5. I mean, for God's sakes, just say something so that the cop doesn't know that you're totally snonkered. Because they do. I don't know how, but they look at a guy and they go, yeah, I smelled the odor of alcohol and observed the person slurring. And I'm like, well, it's TV, so I can't smell alcohol. But they didn't really seem to be slurring. But for God's sakes, they can't balance to save their lives. So obviously, they're really inebriated. I got to speed it up because I'm running out of time. What else did I notice about this movie? So anyway, these two idiots gallivant around Los Angeles or wherever the heck they are, and there's intercut with these weird scenes of this TV show. It's kind of like Jerry Springer about a guy interrogating a child murderer. And then you slowly realize these guys aren't peculiar. They're peculiar with a capital peculiar. And in fact, they've been murdering people all day long, and the day before, and possibly before that. I think all the people they murder are women. I assume there's a reason. I don't know what it was because the movie never really made it clear. They meet people and they kill them, and then they have more witty discussions about fate and good and evil. And in the end, they show up on this TV show with the Jerry Springer guy interrogating the child murderer. And then they kill the host. A cop kills one of them, catches the other one. He is eventually given a lethal injection, although here's where I knew it was fiction, because it's in California. It takes you like 90 years to get the death penalty in California. You know, if you want to be a murderer and actually make it to the death chamber, you better commit your murder when you're like 15. Because you're going to die before they get a chance to kill you. Just from the line, right? It's really long. The line, you got to be a major murderer to even consider being killed. Like I guess these people had killed a bunch of people, so they probably moved near the front. But if you're in California and you want to get killed, you got to kill a couple people and maybe make 2 or 3 of them a cop. You know, just so that they'll put you near the front of the line, for God's sake. Anyway, so then, you know, they give the other one. And then they meet up in this white room with the white bench and the great set. And then they talk again about fate. And I guess one of them, the guy in the suit, I guess, was supposed to be Satan or something. It wasn't exactly clear to me. I later read a review and they said, well, the guy in the suit is his conscience, following him around Los Angeles. And I'm like, that guy was a terrible conscience. Your conscience is supposed to keep you from killing people, not help you. I think if your conscience is helping you kill people, that's a problem. And I think if he's talking in a fake British accent just to cheese you off, that's also a problem. And you got to get a new conscience or stop listening to the one you got. Because it's making you do things you don't want to do. I'm almost out of time, so I'll fill you in on a couple more things. I think last time I mentioned the deadly cancerous mole I had on my leg, which they had to cut off. Turns out it's not deadly cancer. So you can stop sending me flowers. It was just a mole. And when I went to see my doctor, he said, yeah, funniest thing. Look, totally cancerous to me, but pathologist said no. I'm like, well, there's 3 weeks of my life I'm not getting back, I guess. Worrying about the deadly mole cancer when it was just a mole. I don't think I have a lot more time. John asked, why do I pay tax if I buy a hot sandwich at Togo's, but not if I buy a cold one? Subway. And it's very complicated. John asks at Subway, but the rules are the same at Togo's. And I like Togo's better, and maybe they'll sponsor the show. It's very arcane, involving tax law, but prepared food, like you'd get in a restaurant, is taxed. Whereas unprepared food, like poor people would eat and get in a supermarket, is not taxed. But what do you do about sandwiches? Because you could buy sandwiches in the supermarket and then they're food, or you could buy sandwiches at a fancy French restaurant and then they're taxed. And so they kind of have this rule of thumb. If the restaurant knows you're going to eat it there, they're supposed to charge tax on it. But if you could take it out, no tax, because you could save it and eat it tomorrow. And then it would be food as opposed to food. But see, if they heat something up,